So welcome to the start of this new video series that I'm doing, and I'm anticipating that it will eventually be 12 videos because it's based on a year-long project that I'm working on for 2025. Now, you might be thinking, but Laura, it's already August. Why is this the first we're hearing about it? Surely we should have been seeing this video in January. And you'd be right. But there are a few reasons why I've waited until now to start filming. Firstly, obviously, I'm a chronic procrastinator, so that's a big part of it. But the other thing is because it's a year-long project and I've been following prompts and tutorials from somebody else, I had no idea whether I would actually see this through for a whole year. I thought the idea of following monthly prompts seems like a good idea, but I didn't trust myself. I thought I might do 1 or 2 months and then get bored of it or not like it, or anyway, now I've done 7 out of the 12 months. I'm pretty confident that I can see it through to the end. So I thought it was about time I started showing you what I've done. And just as a quick glimpse, these are the fabric pieces that I've been working on. And in this video, I'm just going to talk you through the various elements on this first one. So let me tell you a little bit about the tutorials that I've been following and the end goal for this project. So first of all, the channel is K3N Cloth Tales, and I will put a link in the description below. Now K3N is kind of an abbreviation of Kathryn. So the lady that's doing these videos, that's her name, Kathryn, and she talks a lot about slow stitching and the ethos around slow stitching. Now I'm not going to go into that side of things in my videos. If you're interested in that like the sustainability aspect and the reusing old cloth and more in the environmentally friendly kind of aspect of how she deals with things, I recommend that you go and view on her channel. But for what I'm going to show you, I'm just going to be talking through my thought process and a little bit about how I've done the different things. Obviously there will be some information about the cloth that I've used, but for the most part I've no idea of the actual fibre content of the cloth because I have mostly been using fabric that I already had, either new fabric that I bought a long time ago and never used, or some of it is second-hand or has been cut from old garments and things like that. So the premise of the project, what Kathryn calls it, is the coverlet of comfort. And whether I will continue to call it that myself or whether I'll give it a different name by the time it's finished, I don't know. But throughout this project, that's what I've been calling it because that's what she calls it. So basically, at the end of the year, you'll have 12 panels stitched together to make a kind of quilt. Now she's not going to be putting any wadding or backing on hers for it to be a padded quilt. I don't know yet how I'm going to finish mine off. I may just have it as just a fabric wall hanging. If I decide I want to use it as an actual quilt, then maybe I will put some padding in. I don't know. That will come, in a few months' time. I've not made that decision yet. But as for the subject matter of what we've been stitching, each month Kathryn suggests a theme and she also suggests techniques. So the idea is that by the end of the year you've got this coverlet which represents different aspects of yourself and your life, and you've also done quite a few different sewing techniques as well. Now all the sewing is hand stitched and I would describe it as a combination of patchwork and embroidery. There's lots of variation in that. I mean, 1 month we did cloth weaving, so that's neither patchwork nor embroidery, that's weaving, but then there were embroidery elements and patchwork elements added to it. So, you know, it's a real mixed bag, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. As I say, at the start I did think maybe I might do 1 or 2 months and get bored. So that's why at the beginning I decided to work on squares, because I thought, well, even if I only do 1 or 2, I could always make it into a cushion cover. And the majority of people that have been following along with this project have been joining their pieces as they go, because that's how Kathryn's been doing it. But because I started off with this idea of doing them as separate squares, because I didn't know if I was going to stick to it, I've just carried on doing it as separate squares, and now I want to start joining them. And what I bought, this is one of the few things that I've actually bought new for this project, is I've bought this tape. It was like a 2-inch wide cotton twill tape, and the plan is to basically use it to frame the pieces. So at the end of the year I will have 12 panels, each with this cream frame around the panel. And because each month's theme has been quite personal, so January, the theme was literally self, and the idea of starting with self, and then, for example, I'll tell you a little sneak peek, the theme for February was home. So it's sort of like, you know, from yourself to your home, and then just gradually kind of moving out further into the world, really. I've tried very hard to make each piece tell a story about my life. So my idea is that these 12 panels on this finished coverlet or quilt, whatever I end up calling it, will basically be like 12 chapters of an autobiography. I have no idea what the themes will be for the rest of the year. Kathryn doesn't tell us in advance what's coming. We just have to trust the process, as they say. And she very much encourages people to interpret her prompts in their own way. And she often gives different ideas. So it's kind of like, well, this is what I'm doing, but you could also do this, this, or this. So she kind of gives a variety of ideas, and I'm going to show you obviously my own interpretation of that. So I didn't actually start this project at the beginning of the year. I think I'd watched the January videos and I thought, oh, that's an interesting idea, but I didn't actually intend to join in. And then when it came to February, I was like, oh, I really want to join in with this. So because I wanted to keep up with the current tutorials, I did February first, and then I went back and started January. And I didn't actually finish the January piece until the end of April, because I was doing it in between the other months. But as it is the theme for January, even though I didn't finish it until April, it just seems appropriate that I show you the January piece first. Okay, so this is my piece for January, and it's 16 inches by 16 inches roughly. So we started off with this 9 patch in the very centre, which the idea was that that's supposed to represent yourself, and in my case I've done this to represent me and my late husband. And the pale sections are actually silk, which is leftover fabric from when I made my wedding dress. And then the red squares represent my husband. But the reason I laugh about that is because when I was sorting through my fabric and I was looking for what would be appropriate, what would look nice with the cream but would also represent Trevor. And I found this piece of fabric and I thought, oh, that's perfect. That was what I used to make Trevor a tie. And then when I unfolded the piece of fabric, it was still a complete square. And then I remembered, oh, that was the fabric that I'd intended to use to make a tie for Trevor. But it still reminds me of him because it's exactly the sort of thing that he would have worn. And then this circle, which is couched down, but I like the idea of it being sort of like an unfinished story. And I don't know if you can see, but around the outside and the inside of that circle, I did some gold stitching, which the idea of that was to bring out the sort of slight gold in the red fabric. And then moving out to the green border, this was actually fabric that I used to make curtains in our first house when we got married, and I've actually still got these curtains hanging in my living room today. They are a little bit faded now though. And then this wording around the edge is actually a Bible verse from Galatians 6 verse 4, and I slightly shortened the quote to make it fit. So on this side we've got, let each one examine his own actions and he will have cause for rejoicing in himself and not in comparison to others. And I just thought that was a lovely quote for a piece which was supposed to be about yourself, about myself. This idea of not comparing yourself with others, you know, especially with creative things. I think we often make comparisons with others, and it's not a good thing. You know, if we think we're better than someone else, well, that's not a nice way to be. And if we think we're worse than someone else, well, that's not good for us either. So, you know, being able to appreciate what other people do, but not judge yourself based on other people, I think that's important. So I thought that was a really nice quote to have on there. And then these circles, this one was from a dress that I made for myself when I was a teenager, and I really liked that dress. At the time it was the most expensive fabric I'd ever bought, but I just loved it so much I had to have it. And then these two black and white ones were from some circle skirts I made from when I used to go with my husband, and we'd go to the local rock and roll club and we went to see, you know, rock and roll bands and rockabilly bands. So that, you know, for a period of my life, that was really important to us. So I wanted to include that here. And then just above that, kind of connected with the musical theme, I've got some music notes, and in particular is a bass clef rather than a treble clef, because I did also try and learn to play the double bass. And I've actually still got the double bass, but it's not been played for so many years that I'm actually planning, finally plucking up the courage to let it go, to sell it. But I love it. It's just a very big ornament at the moment. So that's that central section, which I was really happy with. And then it was just like that for some time, and I didn't really know how to move on from there. So I put this beige kind of backing around, thinking that that would give me a good base to put multiple things on, but actually I don't think it's quite worked as well as I hoped it would. First of all, these two pieces, the white with it's got little holes in it, and then I've done red stitching and red French knots in the little holes. Those two pieces have no significance whatsoever. it was just at the point where I was thinking, oh, it's all looking a bit disjointed. I wanted something that I could repeat to try and bring some sort of unity. Okay, so next let me tell you about these little hexagons round the top. So these two in the middle represent my mum and dad, and this fabric is actually from a dress that my mum had made. So obviously inherited my interest in dressmaking from my mum. And then this is actually part of the lining of one of my dad's coats, or rather not actually my dad's coat, but when I was a teenager I had several items of clothing the same as my dad, and I know that sounds weird, and it is weird, but I liked the fact that I was dressing like my dad. And we both had matching leather jackets, and this is the lining of that leather jacket. And I wore mine all the time. I wore it in, you know, all weathers, in the rain, and the leather, I mean, it was only a cheap jacket really, and it was not good quality leather. It was basically looked like a dirty chamois leather. I don't think I've got any photos of either me or my dad wearing it, to be honest. And mine went very brittle, and you know, it just got wrecked. So this is actually a piece of the lining that I'd kept from my coat, but my dad's probably still got it somewhere. My dad had a matching coat. So yeah, so that's my mum and dad. And then on this side, this represents my grandparents on my dad's side. So the stripe is actually from a piece of shirt which was my granddad's. And then this one is my little miniature stitched replica of a fabric painting that my nan had done when she was sick, and she was going to like a respite at a local hospice, and they would do different activities with the patients. And one of the times she was there, she did this painting on silk, and I didn't want to cut up the actual silk painting, so I just did an embroidered miniature version of it. And then over on this side, this represents my grandparents on my mum's side, and the floral is for my nan. I've got some old curtains which she gave me, and I don't know if she made them or if she just gave them to me and they'd come from somewhere else. I'm not sure, but I didn't want to cut up the curtains just to be able to put a little patch here. So I just found a piece of floral fabric that was close enough to the design of the curtains that it would just remind me of that. And then this for my granddad. They lived on a farm, and he would wear this kind of beigey sort of jacket thing when he was working, and instead of a belt he always had some of the twine from the bales of straw. So this is my granddad with his bit of baling twine round his middle. Okay, and then if we sort of move down this way, this is a little piece of tatting which I did just to represent one of the many hobbies that I've done. The backing fabric is actually, well, I'll tell you about the backing fabric in a minute, because it's the same as this, and I'll tell you about it when we get down to this one. So for this purpose it was just to have a dark backing to show up the light colour of the tatting. Here, this is my mum and dad again. So again, this one is from a piece of fabric from a dress, another dress that my mum had made. And then this sort of denim-ish kind of piece of fabric. I remember when I was young, my dad was quite often wearing a denim shirt, and again, it's like I didn't want to cut up an actual shirt of his just to be able to put a little patch here. This is from a shirt of Trevor's, my late husband, and a couple of the buttons from the shirt. And you notice I've done like red stitching, and I tried to use the red again as a way to sort of try and unify it, because I started off with some red in the middle, and I don't know whether it's worked or not, but anyway, that's what that is. And then here embroidered Roman numerals, which is 1975, so that's the year that I was born. I didn't really want to put 1975 on here because I just felt that like numbers would kind of jump out too much, so I thought doing it as Roman numerals was kind of a slightly subtler way to include my age. And then also on the subject of embroidery, this little patch down here, this one you may recognise. It's in reference to my YouTube channel. This is my little box of watercolour paints. I didn't bother doing the lid, I thought that would complicate things too much, but that represents the colours that I've been using for quite some time. This one is actually in the Nepali language, and it says Laura. So again, in the same way as with the year that I was born, I kind of wanted to include my name. I mean, that, you know, when you're talking about yourself, like your name is such an important part of that, isn't it, of who you are. So I wanted to include my name in here, but I didn't want it to be like oh, Laura was here, or, you know, just I didn't want to attract too much attention to my name, but I wanted to include it. So by doing it this way, it includes not only my name, but also reference to the fact that I spent quite a lot of time trying to learn the Nepali language. And then the final little embroidery, this book, partly to represent my interest in bookbinding, but it's also supposed to be a Bible, and I did like little French knots to represent the chapter numbers, and then little lines for the text. So that one's kind of doing double work really, specifically as a Bible, but also as books for reading and also bookbinding. And then finally we get to this little corner, which I don't quite know how to put into words how I feel about this bit. I think it really sums up my split personality. My Jekyll and Hyde of interests, because this embroidery here is actually a very simplified version of the front end of a classic car that I used to own. In fact, I had two of the same model. So this is like the headlights and the side lights, and then these little star-shaped badges on the front grille. So that represents the classic car. And then this fabric, which I mentioned earlier, this is actually cut from an old pair of overalls, and these are flame retardant overalls which I had when I did a college course for welding. So I've got a City and Guilds qualification in welding. Please don't ask me to demonstrate it because I've not done it for so long I wouldn't even remember what to do. But the fact is I have got a qualification in welding. Whether I remember it or not is neither here nor there. My classic cars, and then this piece here is from my bobbin lace making. I mean, what a contrast between bobbin lace and welding. So there you go. That's my full explanation of my self piece for January. And like I said, it was a little bit bitty the way it was done, and it's kind of not that cohesive in how it's put together, but all the individual bits are important to me. Oh, and I nearly forgot to mention that it's stitched onto just a plain white backing fabric. The reason I did the backing was, again, there's lots of things that I followed that Kathryn had suggested on her channel, and she particularly likes sewing through 2 layers of fabric rather than just one. And so I followed her lead and I did the same thing, and I did actually really like it. Oh, and the other thing, which you might not be able to see, is all around the beige I've done like a running stitch, so that the, you know, the whole fabric of the beige is attached to the backing. It's not just attached at the edges, it's sort of stitched all the way through. And on that note, let me show you the back. You know this expression where people say, oh, the back of your work should be as neat as the front? Well, I think that's rubbish. I don't think that's possible. Obviously some people do have very neat backs on their stitching. I don't, because I'm not thinking particularly about where my thread's going on the back. I'm thinking about how it looks on the front. And one of the expressions that Kathryn used, talking about the back of a piece of sewing, she refers to it as the backstory, and I really like that. It sort of gave me, I want to say peace, that's not the right word, acceptance. I think that's a better term. Acceptance of, you know, whatever's going on in the back is kind of part of the story of how it was made. While I was editing this video, I realised that although it's nice to see the whole piece in one view, you can't necessarily see the details, especially if you're watching on a small device. So I thought I'd show you some close-ups. So here's my Nan's embroidered flower, or my embroidered flower, but a copy of my Nan's painted flower. And then these pieces have just got red running stitch around the edge. And then this piece where it's got like the holes in the fabric. So it's attached down all around the edges, but sort of loose in the middle, and then little French knots in the gaps, and it's edged with herringbone stitch. That's my 1975 and my bobbin lace and my embroidered front end of my car, my name in Nepali, and those other embroidered bits. Here's the tatting up close, and then you see these circles. I used red blanket stitch around the edge to attach the circles, my music notes, and then my lettering. I'm really pleased with how the lettering turned out. Let me just turn that. So that's kind of the first half of the verse, and then the second half of the verse. Let's put it back the right way up. And then this part in the middle, hopefully you can see the gold stitching around. So I did 2 lines of stitching. So the line closest to the red circle is back stitch, and then the second line is running stitch. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed that look at my January piece, or more accurately described as my February to April piece. And I hope you'll come back soon and see the actual February piece. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye for now.